Hello and welcome to GDG Tech Sessions. Yet another episode is just about to happen. A very quick intro of what are we doing and what are we? We are GDG Tech Sessions. We do produce quite a bit of a different kind of content related to uh, some kind of GDG topics that typically you'll see at GDG meetups. So we've been for a little bit more than a year and a half now. We have had a lot of views on YouTube. We have 3,000 plus total views. We have more than 150 subscribers. So if you're not one of them, please do subscribe. And we have already getting close to 20 different sessions, and this one will be yet another of those sessions. A very quick intro about the team. So this is the team, the four of us. Three of us are from Madeira, an island in Portugal, and then it's me in Norway. So representing GDG Madeira and also representing GDG Cloud Oslo. That is a very quick introduction of who we are and what we do, and I think it's time to say hello to our speaker for today. So the topic for today is Flutter and Flutter tips for productivity and learning. And our speaker for today, that would be Roman. Let's welcome Roman onto our virtual stage. Hello, hey, you have the Twitter bird as well. Yes, you can introduce both yourself and the bird. Go
Well,
ahead.
thank you very much, Rustam. Such a pleasure to be here. Welcome everybody to this session of GDG Tech Sessions and GDG Madeira. Thank you so much for the invitation. Such a great experience to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Before I leave the stage over to you, I just want to do one quick thing and reminder to everyone watching us live is that you can ask questions, and you do that by typing them in the chat on YouTube where you're watching hopefully this video, and we will ask these questions, or I will be asking questions most likely, Roman, at the end of his talk. So that is pretty much it. I think I am done with all the announcements and all the introductions. I think it's time to leave the stage to you, Roman. Go ahead, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much again. Welcome everybody to this session. I'm Roman. I am a Flutter GDE. I am also a GDG lead organizer at GDG Lawrence. So I welcome the whole GDG community coming together. GDG Madeira, GDG Oslo, all of you guys. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am also a GDG Northeast mentor for the Northeast region in the United States. And I'm more than happy to be here sharing my knowledge as a Flutter developer as well, and as a Flutter enthusiast, and such a great admirer of this amazing framework. So thank you very much for joining. And here it is, the session about Flutter productivity tips. These are some of the tips that I've accumulated throughout my years of developing Flutter, working with the community to actually make you productive, and also to enhance your learning experience in your Flutter learning journey. So thank you very much. And again, let's start. So I want to make this session very interactive. For those of you joining right now, I would love for you to accompany me in this community-driven experience by joining at slido.com with the code 685319. I want to make this very interactive. I want to hear from you. Long gone are the days where there is a talk and someone just stands there talking. We need to make this very interactive. I want to hear from you. You will hear from me. We'll make this very interactive. So we make this learning experiences very collaborative, and that's exactly what we want to do here. GDG Madeira bringing great events like this for you, for the community. So I hope you guys join me at slido.com with the code 685319. I'll make sure you'll have a lot of fun, and we'll make this very engaging. So please join me. You can even scan the code, and also I'll be doing like a couple of questions and whatnot in a minute. A little bit about me just to start. I'm originally from Dominican Republic. I migrated to United States when I was really young. Lived in New York for a little bit. That's where I got my computer science degree. And I've been so passionate about computer science and programming in general. Then I moved. I'm currently living in Massachusetts, and this is where I currently work at Philips Health Systems. I've been very passionate about web and mobile development, and I've been, it's been a couple of years already. Me in the industry where I started from developing applications for desktop under Windows, then doing like cloud technologies like Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud. Also, a very avid JavaScript, HTML, HTML5, and CSS3 programmer for a couple of years. But then, as soon as I encountered like a framework like Flutter, I fell in love with it, and I haven't dropped it ever since. These are some of my links that you might want to follow me on. So I have a YouTube channel as well where I post regularly about Flutter and other technologies, mostly like Google Cloud. So please make sure to follow me on my YouTube channel. Also, I've been doing also like some live streaming through Twitch. So you can follow me there and you can just, make fun of me, making mistakes, just building applications and doing like live coding. And I love to share that with the community. So please join me there as well. I also have a portfolio site where I've posted a lot of things in there, like workshops. I even create like custom code labs to train people on Flutter and other technologies. Also, like my portfolio of Flutter applications that I've developed throughout the years. And last but not least, you can follow me on Twitter. And then you can even DM me there. And then I also post about great events like this one, so that you can keep in touch with me and you can keep in tune on what the latest and greatest is in the Flutter world. So thank you very much. I would definitely appreciate if you join me through there. Thank you. So in Slido, I'm gonna be dropping this one of these questions in there. So like, give me like, actually, I'm going to just present it real quick so I can just show it to you. I just wanted to see from everybody, like from 1 to 5, what is your level of expertise? Like what type of coding, what's your expertise in coding, whether it's like Flutter, it doesn't have to be Flutter precisely, but I want you to tell me like, from 1 to 5, you can drop it in the chat. What is the level of expertise that you have in coding in general? Let me just present this again, because I think the Slido just didn't kick in very well. So let me try it again. And then let me know if you guys can see it. So here, I just wanted you to join. You will see it right now. So again, you join at slido.com with the code 685319. You can scan the code and then just tell me from 1 to 5, what's your level of coding expertise, whether you're a Flutter developer, web developer, any type of developer. I see that some people are answering. Thank you so much for participating. I see that the audience is a little bit split, but that's totally fine because here we're trying to bring everybody together. These type of events are to bring the community together, learn together, and we'll make it so that everybody from beginner, newbies, experts, intermediate level developers learn a little bit from this experience. So thank you so much for joining in this experience. So what is Flutter? If you just came across this presentation, you stumble upon this video on YouTube, and then you're wondering, what's Flutter? So Flutter is actually Google's UI toolkit for developing beautiful, natively compiled user interfaces from one single code base. You're gonna use Dart, which is the programming language that the Flutter framework uses, and then you can build applications from one single code base targeting multiple platforms. So just another question, another ice-breaking question for you guys. After work, like after you finish your 8 hours, let's say from your job, what do? Do you work on a side project? Do you, relax, you forget about coding? You actually do a little bit of both. Or you just do other things not related to like coding or anything like that. Personally, myself, I try to value like family time, but also I want to stay on touch on the latest and the greatest of technology. So I do a little bit of both as well. Like a lot of people also do that. Thank you again for participating. I kind of, again, gravitate towards the little bit of both to kind of keep like a good balance on like keeping abreast and keeping in touch of what's the latest and greatest, keep up to date, but also, do other things that engage that. I know a lot of people here are, binge watching the Squid Game and stuff like that, like really cool stuff. But you also got to give that time to, keep up to date on the latest and greatest on technologies and the things that you're passionate about. So thank you very much for participating. So again, like I was saying, Flutter is is Google's UI toolkit for developing natively compiled applications, not just mobile applications, but you can target multiple platforms. You can do mobile, embedded, desktop, web from one single code base, targeting all those platforms just using Dart. Can you believe that? So now in this session, I'm going to give you my 10 useful tips for Flutter productivity and learning. So you can use this, again, like I said, if you're a beginner or you're an expert, you might take away a few things from here, but these are to maximize your productivity as an existing Flutter developer, or if you're a beginner and you don't know where to start, these tips will definitely put you on the right track. So let's begin. Tip number 1, hot reload. Some people might think, what's hot reload? So hot reload, pun intended, is one of the hottest features of the Flutter framework. I'm going to show you that in a minute. When we talk about Flutter hot reload, it's the ability for Flutter, when you're coding in Flutter, you can just change the code right away, and then you see things happening in real time. So you have multiple things. I'm going to just try one sample application right here, and then I'm going to explain the different types of hot reload. So when you're typing and you're developing code, as you're developing, you can you insert code into the Dart virtual machine, and in real time, as you're developing, you see the changes happening on the screen. For example, if you, let's say, are developing a simple application where you have like a label and a button, and then let's say you're running the application and you want to change this label that says, hello Flutter from, let's say, hello GDG Madeira, for example. If you want to perform hot reload, when you save your code, you hit the R key and then you reload. That is hot reload. You saw right in front of your eyes how I was able to be productive. I did not have to bring down the whole application. The application was able to stay in there. The state was maintained, and then you can just make changes on the fly. You can say, hello world again, and then let's say you save it and reload one more time. You see the changes reflected on the screen as you're making changes. This is hot reload. Something that makes you very productive. You don't have to rebuild the whole application, and you continue coding seamlessly and making progress in your application. The other type of reload that Flutter offers is called full restart. So it's a full restart, meaning it's like I close the application and then it comes right over again. It's a little bit destructive because you have to bring down the whole thing and then you have to reload the whole application again. Everything gets installed, everything gets reloaded. So it takes a little bit longer. That's more of a last case scenario. You want to be productive, you want to be continuing, so you do either hot reload or full reload. A full reload, which is a third option, is actually when you reload the application but you don't maintain the state. For example, there's something called like in Flutter, you actually create widgets that maintain the state. They're called stateful widgets. Widgets that don't maintain state and they just render, they're called stateless. So in this particular case, if I click this button, you see that this value keeps getting incrementing. It keeps incrementing. That's why I'm maintaining state in memory. Now, if I make a change, for example, hello, Mars, whatever. If I save this and I reload, you see that I reloaded, but the state was maintained. The value of 10 still remained. That's why I'm maintaining state. If you do a full reload, I can do Shift R. You will see that this application will reload, but the state was not maintained. Now you see that the 10 went back to 0. That means you're destroying the state, rebuilding your widgets, and you're doing a full reload. Then the other one, like I told you, which is full restart, you have to bring down the whole application and destroy the state and even the application itself. So you have three options: hot reload, full reload, and full restart. Or either one of those three will make you productive, but just make sure to use them appropriately. Okay, let's continue to the next one. So we talked already about hot reload. The next one is use packages. Tip number 2, use packages. Try not to reinvent the wheel and use existing packages that the Flutter team has put out in there so that you can create your applications much quicker. But you could also leverage some of the packages available from the community. So yes, you can, if you want to learn Flutter, you can create things from scratch and build things on your own. But if you want to put like an MVP out there, you want to be sure that you put an application in front of your users quicker, then you use packages. The way to pull packages out of Flutter, or for your Flutter applications, you can go to the pub.dev package website. Here you can find a bunch of packages that you can use. For example, some of the packages that I've used, let's say if you want to use like the Google Maps, you find like the Google Maps Flutter. Like there you can find like all those packages that allow you to leverage the Google Maps, as opposed to you rolling out your own package or building like this package from scratch, and then it takes you much longer to build your application. So make sure to leverage packages, and also if you feel inspired down the line, you can create even your own packages in Flutter. That way you contribute to the community and the whole Flutter ecosystem continues growing. So tip number 2 for me is use packages. Let's go to the next tip. So tip number 2, use packages. Now tip number 3, use icon fonts. So icon fonts are such a way, a versatile way to use images in your application. Use sharper images using vector graphics as opposed to raster images. For example, like raster images like pictures, PNGs, JPEGs, and whatnot. But then if you use icon fonts, your icons and your images will look very sharp because they're based on vector images. Let me show you a couple of tips on how to leverage those things in your application. For example, you can leverage the icon fonts available from the material design, and they come for free in Flutter. Like they already come installed for you. So here, this is like the collection of icons that you can use in your application. And it doesn't matter how big or how small you make your icons, they continue looking very sharp and very crisp. So you want to make your applications very slick looking, very with high quality. Make sure to use the icon fonts. And again, like I showed you, if you want to use icon fonts, let's say on your code, you can just immediately use, for example, like an icon widget. You can add an icon widget, and immediately you can just type icons dot, and then you have like the whole collection of icons in there. Let's say if I say favorite, let's say if I want to add that, and then I want to add a color to this icon. I'm gonna zoom in a little so that everybody can see. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna make an icon which is gonna be the favorite icon, and I'm gonna add a color of red, and then I'm gonna add a size of, let's say, 100. By you doing this, you can actually add let's say icons in your application, and then you see how sharp it looks. You don't have to worry about like pixelation or anything like that. You can make them as big as you want. You can do anything you want. They're very versatile. So that was me using the fonts that come with the material icons. But you can even go as far as creating your own icons and bring them into your application as well. This is a tip for me. Again, maybe you were not familiar with this, but there are services online that allow you to import your SVG images and turn them into icons that then you can import in your application and use them in your own applications. Like I created this application, and then I wanted like a couple of specific icons that weren't there anywhere, and then I created them myself as SVGs. Then you import them into a let's say a service like Fantastic, and then you export like a TTF file. The great thing about the icon fonts is that in one single file, like a font file, like a TTF or an OTF, you can import it in your application, and then you can have dozens of images in one single file using a very minimal memory footprint in very small file size as well. And what I love about it is that you can resize them as anything you want, and they still keep that sharpness and that great looking look and feel that you can provide to your applications, making them very unique. So again, you can use icon fonts, and very easy. They're very simple also to import in your application. You can just come here and let's say in your Flutter package, in your Flutter application, you can find this popspec.yaml, which is the kind of like a configuration file that you have in Flutter. And then you scroll all the way down. There's even a section where you can just import your fonts, like right here. You can just uncomment one of these. You say, for example, the name of the font that you're creating. In my case, let's say, Roman font. Let's say you make up some font. You target the path where your TTF is, and then you, let's say, it's coming out of the assets, fonts, Roman font.ttf, and then that's it. You can immediately start using it by referring to the font family name in your application, and you can bring your own fonts in there. So I truly recommend, strongly recommend using icon fonts, because they give you like very sharp look and feel on your images and whatnot. So that was tip number 3, using icon fonts. Let's continue. I hope everybody is liking the presentation. I hope everybody's engaged. Now, tip number 4, use snippets and plugins. So some of you know, like, okay, so I hate typing a lot and I have to create like a bunch of classes and whatnot. There's a bunch of snippets and plugins that allow you to be productive and typing less code while maintaining quality in your code as well. So you want to use those available snippets and plugins from Flutter that you, and even created from the community, that allow you to be very very productive, that you can learn also at the same time, because that way you know how it gets created, and then you can emulate those examples. So let me show you how to accomplish that. For example, let's say you're here in your code, and let's say you want to create one more file. Let's say I'm going to be creating one more file that represents a class, a stateless widget in Flutter. I'm going to say my first app.dart, for example. Remember, because we're coding in Dart, the programming language used in the Flutter framework, then you have to save your files as a Dart. But now let's say you want to start creating a stateless widget. Of course, you have to say, class, my first app, extends stateless widget. And then you see that I'm already like typing a lot, and then I still have to, I could have made a mistake when I was typing it. So you can use some of the snippets available in Flutter, like in the whole ecosystem. And then you could do something like this, like a shorthand. You can say like stateless W. And then if you do this, voila, you get like the whole class already, the whole scaffolding that you didn't have before. And now you can immediately start saying my first app. So you see, I already saved a lot of typing. There was no mistakes when the class was created, and then I can immediately start using it. There are other things that you can do, for example, like some snippets on objects, on some widgets, specific widgets from the library that you can leverage. For example, let's say you want to add a container. For example, you say, okay, I'm going to return a container, like that. And this is like one of the most versatile widgets in Flutter. But let's say, for example, within your container, let's say you want to wrap this container into another type of widget. Of course, you will have to cut it. You have to create, let's say I'm going to wrap it inside a padding widget. I have to, you see, like I'm already making some mistakes. I have to make it a child, then do my container. What if I instead keep my same widget, and then I just right click and say, for example, I can just come over here and use this little, the little yellow light bulb, and you see what all the options that I get. It says like wrap in center, wrap in a row, wrap in a padding, the one that I just created. And then if you click there, you see I already got all the typing required to create a padding widget that wrap my container, and I didn't have to make mistakes. So these are some of the snippets and plugins that you can use in your while you're coding to make you productive, and at the same time, you'll learn how they get created. How do you install these plugins? Very easy. Let's say if you're like in Visual Studio Code, which is kind of like my editor of choice, you can come over here where on the left-hand side in the extensions link, when you click on this button, and you can search for extensions that are available, built not only by Flutter, but from the community that you can leverage. And then if you type something like Flutter, you can see, for example, like there's like a awesome Flutter snippets. If you select that one and you see that is the one that I'm actually using, if you scroll down, it tells you the way that you can use those snippets. You see the one that I use for stateless widget. You can have a lot of other options, like you can create the build method and whatnot. So I strongly recommend using snippets for making yourself very productive, so that you don't make less mistakes, saves you a lot of typing, and kind of optimize the development process. So that was tip number 4 from me: use snippets and plugins. Let's continue with the rest of the presentation. And again, I continue thanking you guys for sticking with me there. Now I'm giving you tip number 5. Tip number 5, create models for prototyping. You know that Dart is an object-oriented language that you can use in multiple ways. So instead of you, let's say, hard coding the data that you're using to populate, let's say, your widgets in your application, it's good that you actually model the data that you know your application is going to be consuming down the line. That way, you bring it closer to what your intended application is at the end, as opposed to you having to do a lot of refactoring at the end, and then you don't know, maybe another programmer or someone who's on your team, you want them to understand what is the type of data that you're feeding into your application. It's better that you leverage the power of Dart and you create models, even if you're doing some prototyping. So let me show you how to accomplish that. For example, like I showed you in the main application, you saw here that how I was just, creating like a couple of variables, very simple stuff, nothing too complex. And then here, for example, I'm just showing you, let me just hide this piece right here. You say that I'm just hard coding stuff. Let's say I'm just hard coding like a string and like a value and stuff like that. But if you want to leverage the true power of Dart, you want to create models, you want to create collections, and then you use those to feed it into your widgets as you're building your application. That way, when the time comes, when you need to pull the values, let's say from a service, from a RESTful API or something like that, you're much closer to what the end result or what your application would do. So let me show you. Let's say I create a class. Remember, I mentioned Dart is very object-oriented. So you can just create classes in Dart. So classes are nothing more than just the blueprint of what your object would be. So you can just do like class, person. So you can just create a class. Same thing as in other programming languages, you have variables that you can create. And then you can do, for example, like a name, and then you do string, last name, and so on. Of course, you also can create constructors. So you can create like a constructor in here, and then you pass, for example, like, how you initialize those variables and whatnot. So instead of me hard coding this information in here in the UI, I will actually then supply a person object that then later on I will hydrate it from a RESTful API, and then I'll map that data. And then now the application at least is being fed with some semi-realistic data or like mocked data that then you can use much closer to what your application will be at the end. Then, for example, let's say here I can just immediately say, person, P equals person. And then I can immediately say name, Roman, last name, let's say I'll say Jaquez, right? So I'll just type it in here like that. And then you see that instead of me hard coding those values with something obscure, some weird object, I can immediately just come over here. Let me just bring the application again. And then instead, I can use this object and I can use this model that I created in my application itself. I can just interpolate values within strings. For example, I could say, like that. Like I can interpolate some values into my application. So you can see that I can show, sorry about that. So I can use like the information of the person that I'm using in here and whatnot. So so you can just like add it up in there and then it will just display for you, something like that. So I can say, for example, like hello, and then I say, P dot, for example, like my object in there, I can say last name, for example. Let's say I want to do it like this. And remember that I'm using for example, like this example right here. Like you saw like this little squiggly that actually the question mark that I used next to the properties. This is something in Flutter called null safety. This means to say that you want to make like this variable could be nullable, like you could have a null value, and then you can now in this case you actually catch errors. Even instead of at runtime, you can even catch them at compile time, and then you can check whether your values do have information in there, whatnot. So you can take a look at like null safety in Flutter. That's one of the greatest features that they have. So you can do stuff like this, and you see you use those properties in there in your application. Very easy to use, and then you can just leverage that information in there. Very cool. So that was also other things that you can use to maximize the way you create your models in Flutter. You can use a service like this one. Let me show you. This is another one of my tips. This is a service called Quicktite Io. Let's say you are devising like a structure, or initially you don't know what your application will look like. You usually define the data structure like as a JSON object. So, for example, here you can see how I'm defining like some object in JSON. And then I can say, I want to make this into a class that then I can use in my application because I don't know what it will look like yet. I only know what the JSON looks like, what I want to do, let's say at the end. And this is like a great option that you can do, let's say to create models on the fly. So check this out. I can come over here in the options. Let's say if I say I define, let's say what the JSON object is, I define some properties and whatnot. And then here I can say, make my language, let's say Dart. I'm going to go to Dart. And then I'm going to say, use this, you can add like types only. You can check like methods and whatnot. But what I just wanted to show you is that out of this, let's say here you define whatever the name of the class will be. For example, in my case, we said person. And then let's say the JSON object will have a, like I had before, like a name, let's say, Roman. And then, for example, if I do something like this, and then now I want to convert this into a class, you see that immediately got created into a class. Something that I can immediately just copy out of here, come back to my code, and then you can just paste it anywhere and I can immediately use it. So of course it's conflicting because there's already a person class removed in there. But if I just do that, you see that I can leverage and optimize the way that I create my models, mock the data and whatnot. So there are so many like packages that you can use to mock your data. Let's say in the case that you don't have a RESTful API and you want to collect data, you want to create like your models and feed it into your widgets. These are great options. Another option for you to mock your data while you're even testing is this package. Remember, we talked about using packages. You can use a package called Mockito. Mockito is a package that allows you to mock your data so that then you can use it not only for testing, but you can use it during development. And then you don't have to rely on having a live service already developed. Let's say your backend folks haven't finished their RESTful API and you don't have data to feed into your project. So you can use packages like this that allow you to mock your data from even like a file and stuff like that. You can create, like I told you, like models. So that way, when your application now is finished, and let's say you're ready to just connect it to a RESTful API, all you have to do is just map the JSON to those models and you're good to go. So that was, again, my other tip on, again, like how to be productive and how to even continue moving forward in your application. Tip number 5 was creating models for prototyping. So that's something that I use a lot. So I totally encourage that as well. Tip number 6. So you do one widget. And one widget does one thing only. Try not to make your widgets. This is kind of like now for people who have already been using Flutter. Try not to make your Flutter widgets like too convoluted. Make sure that you compartmentalize your widgets. Make sure that everything is not within the build method. The build method in a Flutter widget is the most important method because it's the method that the Flutter framework calls when it's going to insert the widget in the widget tree. So the build method is where you establish and you build all your widget hierarchy. So you want to make sure that your widget hierarchy is only, let's say, concentrated and encapsulated enough so that it doesn't do too much. It only does whatever it's supposed to do, as opposed to just one whole build method having the whole application in it. Any single change that you make, remember how the Flutter framework works. Like it rebuilds your widget on every change. So in this particular case, let's say any change happens in your application, you have to rebuild then the whole widget. So it is very inefficient. So you want to make sure that your Flutter widgets do one thing and one thing only. Let me show you one quick example on one workshop that I built a while back that I invite you guys to also use it. So this application I built, I made it very compartmentalized. Let me show you. I have it right here. I'm just going to copy this application and just drop it here in my main chart and my main application. I'm going to save it and reload it. And then I'm going to show you a few pieces of that. So instead of making the application super humongous and everything inside of the one single build method, I was able to make this application very discreetly modular. So for example, I made the drawer menu a separate widget. I made the header a separate widget. I made this scrollable list a separate widget. You see my pattern, right? You make everything smaller widgets. That way you can even collaborate with other people. That way you can do that divide and conquer approach where one single widget does one thing only and only rebuilds when the changes happen inside. For example, if you see here, this is a small bottom app bar that I created. I'm going to show you right here. And here is right here. So I'm going to show you bottom bar. So I have the bottom bar. It's called app bottom bar, and it's a stateful widget. Remember what I mentioned about stateless and stateful? Stateless widgets don't maintain state, but a stateful widget does. So I made this app bottom bar very encapsulated where its state is maintained within itself. That way, whenever I make any of these changes, it only rebuilds that widget. So you see that I created like a list of like app bottom bar items. Remember also that other tip that I gave, creating models. So instead of me like hard coding a bunch of things in here, I created the models for each one of the items and whatnot. And then when I select these items, I perform a set state, and you will see it right here. So I call the set state. The set state is that method available in a stateful widget that triggers the widget rebuild. And then that way you see the changes that are happening in your widget as you rebuild. As you make changes, the set state triggers a rebuild. Flutter framework rebuilds your widget and then it repaints it. As opposed to repainting the whole application, is only repainting the widget that has that build method. So my tip number 6, what I mentioned is one widget does one thing and one thing only. It gives you a lot of power as far as not only productivity, because you can concentrate on one single widget, but performance, because it only concentrates that within that widget. Let's continue along. So again, the main key that for those of you starting, and even for those of you who have been developing applications already, you have to keep one key in mind. That key is that everything in Flutter is a widget. So if you guys were here, we were here present, I would have asked, I repeat, everything in Flutter is a widget. Repeat it. Put it in your brain. Everything in Flutter is a widget. Now, you can say not everything is a widget. If you go to the fine print in Flutter, you could say that everything is a widget, but there are other components like I showed you, like classes, models, an HTTP package, those things that don't render anything on the screen, but facilitate the rendering of those widgets. So you can still code those widgets, and you can say that everything is a widget in Flutter, so that at least you have the mindset on how to understand how widgets work and whatnot. But you could say that everything is a widget because 90% of things are widgets. So if you keep that mantra, you're going to go far, because you could say everything in Flutter is a widget, and then you adopt that mindset, and then you're going to continue learning much, much easier. Also, I would advise those of you who are getting into your Flutter learning journey to learn how Flutter builds the UIs. You have to understand the 3 trees that are available in the Flutter framework. The widget tree, which defines the widgets, which are immutable. Imagine kind of like a configuration that you pass to the Flutter framework. This is kind of like the blueprint of what you want your UI to look like. So it's like a configuration, like I say right there. Then the element tree is nothing more than the abstraction of that widget created in the framework so that it knows how to manage those widgets. So the widget is nothing more than just the configuration. The element tree is the instantiation of that configuration in your in the Flutter framework, and then the render tree is actually what really paints the things on the screen. So this is what you actually see on the screen. That's what takes care of sizing. That's what takes care of painting. That's what takes care of positioning. So everything happens on the render tree, does it like that. So the way that Flutter builds the UIs, you give it a widget, which is immutable. The element tree instantiates those things and then creates a render tree so that then that gets painted on the screen. If you want to make a change, you pass another widget tree with those modifications. The element tree checks, is this the same type? If it's the same type, I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to keep the same thing that I have. That way makes it very efficient. So it doesn't have to completely destroy the widgets that are drawn on the screen, because remember, it's expensive to draw on the screen efficiently, fast, and under 60 frames per second. That's how Flutter keeps that performance very high, and then he efficiently manages those three trees, so that it maximizes the way that things get drawn on the screen only when they change. So you give it a widget, the element tree checks whether the widget exists. If it's a different tree, if it's a different widget, then he replaces it. Otherwise, he just reuses that same object. And then he just tells the render tree to just change the pieces that are different. Otherwise, it would just blow it up and create a new one. So make sure that you understand the three widget trees, the three Flutter trees, the widget tree, the element tree, and the render tree. Tip number 7, test on physical devices. Guys, your Flutter applications are going to be deployed eventually on physical devices. It's not enough that you just test it on your emulators. Make sure that you have a bunch of devices available to you. I said that I don't have enough devices like running and like lying around here. I even have another stack of Android devices here. So you need to make sure that you don't skimp on devices, on like test devices. You don't have to break the bank. You don't have to have the latest, iPhone 13 or the Galaxy S13 or whatever, like the latest device. But you can just have like those devices that you can buy very on the cheap. Like maybe you can take advantage of Black Friday. You can buy like cheap Android devices. You can use those as your testing devices, but make sure that before you publish your applications, you test it on a physical device, because your users eventually will be consuming it through there. So don't forget, tip number 7, test on physical devices. Tip number 8, use the debugger. You saw me a little bit right there using the application, but I was not debugging. I can show you real quick just like how you can do that. Let's say while you're developing your application, you can place breakpoints in your application, and then you can hit the debugger. That allows you to make changes in real time as you see them, and you can debug and see errors that are going on. You can even see, for example, like right now, I'm able to debug as I click and whatnot. You see like even the widget tree as it gets created. You can take a look at the call stack. You can watch on variables. So make sure that you use the debugger a lot. It's easy to attach to. You can attach to a simulator. You can even attach to a physical device as you make changes. So take advantage of using the debugger while you're developing, because it makes you very productive. And then that way you minimize the errors and the bugs as you publish your application. So make sure to take advantage of the debugger in Flutter. Let me continue on, because we're almost at time. Tip number 9, this is kind of like more a suggestion. So you start simple. If you're learning Flutter, my tip number 9 is start simple and small. Start creating like little widgets, start learning the framework, create like little layouts, start creating like UIs, even if they're incomplete. Try not to go immediately into like state management. If you don't know how to create a widget properly, you shouldn't go into more advanced topics if that is going to frustrate you. Make sure that the learning process is fun, so that you can actually, so that those knowledge and that those skills actually stick. So you can just create quick UIs, cool little things, a little game or whatever, to entice you to continue learning. So start simple, start small, don't take too much. And you can even create like a small application and put it out there in front of users. Don't try to take too much and take too much developing that application, because you might even like end up like on another version of Flutter, like a couple of versions behind. Try to start small, don't try to take too much, because that way you learn and you're more nimble at that. And my last tip number 10, build. Just like I said, like I have a bunch of applications that I've developed and I've published out there. That gives you the experience and the comfort and that confidence that you need in order to become a successful Flutter developer. You build applications. You can build a small website, build little things that you can just show to your friends and that you can brag about, because you're like, oh, I love Flutter. So if you truly love Flutter, build stuff. Don't get discouraged by other people while tell you, oh, you have to create the next TikTok or the next super application. No, you can create something small, put it out there, build a portfolio, and that way you can continue learning. That is what makes a great Flutter developer, exercising your Flutter muscle. So build. That is my last tip. So I would invite everybody here to join on a small quiz that I have. So please go and please join me at slido.com with the code 685319. I have a couple of like trivia questions to show you on Flutter. Let's see how your Flutter knowledge is as far as like trivia goes and whatnot. So I want to just there you go. So we have a couple of people already joining. It doesn't matter. Again, remember this is very it's very voluntary. You don't have to join if you don't like. I just wanted to see people engage and people joining the session because we want to make this very collaborative. So I appreciate those of you guys who are joining. Again, like I said, it's totally voluntary. You don't have to join, but I love people when they join these type of sessions because I just don't be like standing here talking. I want to hear from all of you guys. I want to make you part of the experience. So I'm just going to give you like 30 seconds for you to join, and then I'm just going to go to the questions. And again, thank you guys. I see a couple of familiar faces in here, always supporting our events. Thank you guys for joining. I'm going to go to the first trivia question in Flutter, if you guys can get it. So first Flutter trivia question. Which of the following well-known applications was developed in Flutter? Think about this. Flutter is a fairly young framework for developing applications, but some companies have already jumped on board to adopt Flutter as their de facto framework for developing applications. So how about these? Which one of these well-known applications was developed in Flutter? Was it the eBay? Was it the BMW, like the car company? Philips Hue, I work at Philips. The Capital One, like the bank. Or let's say the Groupon, like the one with the coupons and stuff like that. So which one of these companies you think the application was developed in Flutter? So let's see what people are saying. I see some various answers. Okay, perfect. And the correct answer is all of them. You see, all of these applications were developed in Flutter. You could have thought like, oh, just one of this. No, all of them. These have bet a lot to and embraced Flutter as their framework of choice to develop applications. They've noticed how productive their team has become to develop applications in Flutter, and you couldn't have joined at a better time to become a Flutter developer and to embrace this framework. Thank you very much, guys. I'll have another one in a minute. I just wanted to continue and wrap up the presentation. Again, like I mentioned, you own every pixel on the screen in Flutter, so take advantage of that. You can create all types of applications, games, line of business applications, chat applications, anything. You can build websites, desktop applications on Linux, Windows, Ubuntu, Mac OS, anything. Go to town, paint every pixel on the screen because Flutter allows you to do so. And how to get started? Of course, the way to get started is by, of course, downloading the Flutter SDK. Like I mentioned, optional, but not, doesn't hurt to have a physical device to test your applications. So that's how you could get started. Also, you can even use tools like Darpad. Darpad is actually a web-based IDE that you can use to start developing applications in Flutter without even having to install anything on your machine. You can go on any machine, on any laptop or any machine that has a browser. You can go to darpad.dev and you can start coding right there with no installation required. You can just start learning Flutter. So I strongly recommend going to darpad.dev. So for those of you now in the chat also, what is your IDE and code editor of choice? My particular one is Visual Studio Code. Some people use Android Studio. You can definitely use Android Studio. You could also use Xcode, but you can actually use those underneath it. Sometimes, let's say if you want to do something more custom in Flutter, you definitely need to tap into some of these IDEs. But the one where you don't get out of and then you can just code on is Visual Studio Code. I see a few of you guys gravitating towards that. But yeah, Emacs, you can even do that as any type of coding. I even do like coding in VI or Nano because I'm usually doing like Python backend as well. So I can even do some of those. Yeah, IntelliJ, that's a great one as well. Thank you guys for participating. Yeah, I love all the answers. Thank you guys for participating. This is exactly what I wanted from you guys. So thank you very much for participating. Some of the last suggestions again, out of the tips. If you're starting now, you can focus on, for example, like if you don't know where to start small. Like I said, focus on layouts, building widgets, prioritize on building UIs. This is a great way to start if you're starting right now. You can focus on that. Try not to take too much. Start little. Don't get impatient. You're going to get there. You're going to get to state management. You're going to do Riverpod. You're going to do all those things. But start small, and you can start like this. That way you can build up to building cool applications. Like this one. If you see something like this, you're like, oh, this is too much for me. Not really. If you see it like this, for example, if you see an application like this, if you see it like this, you're going to get really far, because that way you just divide and conquer, and you see how this application is nothing more than an arranged set of rows and columns and things that you just assemble together to build a cool application. So I would advise you to challenge yourself, completely make your application stand out of the rest. Challenge yourself, like I say, build cool things. Don't be afraid to take the next step. But first of all, and most importantly, have fun while you're at it. Some of those little things that truly make your app distinguish from other applications is like, things like aesthetics. Like, you don't have to create like something super crazy, advanced, but it's something subtle, like even the icons, the images, the way that you use the colors, and how minimalist you make your application. Even make it completely, blow it out of the water, delight your users, and don't make something like really complex or convoluted. So those are the things that I truly recommend. So this is now the last question that I have for you guys before I part. And again, I thank you very much for joining this session. I'll have just one last trivia for you guys, just to make it more enticing for you when you join my next session, because I try to make it very engaging. So the last trivia question that I have for you: which famous Broadway musical company has a mobile application developed in Flutter to manage their ticket purchases? Like I love like the musicals and watching movies and plays and whatnot, and then I even like to watch them live. So one of them actually developed their application. I see one developed their application to sell their tickets through a Flutter application. The Flutter team worked with their team to build this application. Which company was it? Which Broadway company? Hamilton. Go take a look at it. Download it. That is a Flutter application. So again, thank you so much, everybody. I'm gonna even share some of these slides with you, maybe through my Flutter, through my Twitter channel, through my Twitter, through Twitter. I can share these links. I can share it with the folks in GDG Madeira so that it can get to you. But I wanted just to thank you some of these resources that you can use to learn Flutter. Also, please follow me on Dear Coders on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. You can check some of the videos that I've been putting together for Flutter and some other technologies. But most of all, again, thank you. I appreciate everybody joining. I have so much fun all the time that I'm joining these type of sessions with everybody, sharing my knowledge in Flutter, and just spreading the word on how cool this framework is to make you productive and give you like a great career choice when it comes to developing applications. Thank you so much, guys. If you have any questions, I'll take it.
All right. Thank you very much for this great presentation. It was really fun. It's always fun to host fellow GDEs and to follow with this really interesting talks and everything. So thanks again. We have a few questions. So let's start. I think we'll start from the bottom. So there was a question about. Let me see. So yeah, okay. So can a state change in a particular widget change a state of an element in another widget?
I think yes, I believe I understand your question. Shiri, thank you very much for your question. So when we were talking about like changing states, remember creating stateful widgets, creating stateless widgets. When you want to encapsulate the state only within one single widget, then you make it into a stateful widget, and then you just keep the state in there. Now, if you want one widget to change the state of another widget, then you have to, what they call in Flutter, lift the state. So the state cannot remain within that single widget. It needs to be lifted up so that other widgets can communicate in a very decoupled way. The best way to do that is using like a state management service, such as like the provider package. And what you can do is this widget can trigger can call a method in that, let's say, provider service, and then that service, using, for example, like a change notifier, can trigger a change that another widget is listening to. That way, these two widgets can communicate and trigger changes from one another using a common service, in this particular case, like a provider. So I would encourage you to view and to study that piece. Like state management using provider is like one of the simplest state management out there, and you can use that to trigger state changes from different widgets in a very decoupled fashion. So thank you very much for your question. Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your answer as well. So there is another question. Are there any design third-party apps that help us to bind Flutter applications?
That's,
So
that's
like
an
Figma
amazing
and
question.
Zeppelin and
That's an amazing question, Gonzalo. That's an amazing question because I get that a lot. So people say like, yeah, so how do you build like your cool applications? So Figma is one of them. The one that I use, that I gravitate to, I can even share my screen out here. I use Adobe XD. Adobe XD is like super amazing for developing applications and like mocking the applications and even designing it. And then, for example, like in my particular case, let me show you. I can even share like some applications that I've been working on, and then I build it out first, like in Adobe XD. You know, also Adobe XD has a plugin that when you design the application or your page, you can extract it as a Flutter widget. It's crazy. Like you just do it here, like you do it here in Adobe XD. For example, let me show you. This is the application that I'm building for my GDG, the GDG Lawrence, which again is soon will be out there. So this is the application. I designed it all completely here. I design all the interactions and whatnot. Figma is again another option. You can use other ones out there, like I believe one's called Sketch. You can use some of those, but Adobe, I know for sure, has the capability that you can select your, let's say one single Flutter, let's say one single page in Adobe XD, and you can export it as a Flutter widget. The only thing is that it gives you like a little bit of like a bloated code, a bunch of like things like absolutely positioned. But hey, it's a good start. If you want to do that, I totally encourage using Adobe XD as your prototyping tool. Then after you've consolidated, let's say, all your design and you know that you're satisfied with it, then you can start coding, or you can export some of these things and then use it in your application. But I love your question because I get it all the time, and I keep saying, yes, you could use this. Another suggestion, again, that you're not like, I know nobody's like stealing, like, let's say, like rights from another person. If you go, for example, to websites like dribble.com, and you, for example, filter into like the mobile like aspect of it, you can like the mobile filtering here. Let me show you. You can get inspiration for a bunch of applications that you can build. Like here, I do like mobile, and then I find like really cool like inspirations for building applications that I can just immediately build. For example, like I look at some stuff like this. I challenge myself and I grab this design and then I make it in Flutter, but I give it my own like twist. So try not to, of course, copy exactly the way it is. But websites like this, like Pinterest, Dribble, give you inspirations for your applications so that yours look very unique, and then you step out of your comfort zone and make your applications very cool. So thank you for your question.
Thanks a lot. That was really, really great answer. Again, yet another great answer. One more question.
Sure.
That was from me. So, I mean, I was just sitting here and thinking, like, if people want to get started, are there any projects, katas, tutorials, and stuff like that that people can get started with and kind of work on, or maybe even contribute to, like open source projects and stuff like that, that you might suggest for new beginners? Is
That
there
is a great
anything like that?
That is a great question, Rustam, and I am pleasured to announce to you guys that I've been putting together in my personal portfolio. If you go to Roman Jaquez, Roman Just Codes web that app, and then if you go to my portfolio, I have a section on the workshop section where I've been putting together an amazing set of code labs that you can follow along to start you, to bring you from zero to hero as a Flutter developer. Here I have
Nice.
like beginner code labs. If you just click on some of those code labs, you see some of those ones that I've created. These have been custom created, not the ones from Flutter, created by me for you, so that you can learn step by step I can show you exactly how a widget gets, like, I can even show you like schematics on how a widget gets built. You follow the code along. At the end, I give you some of the, the code, how it works. I don't let you like get stranded or whatever. You can follow along exactly. You can copy paste some of the code as well. So I've been putting together this amazing resources created by me for you, because this is how I learn, and I want you to learn the same way. I want you to be successful. For, of course, I suggest other code labs. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Flutter code labs are amazing, and that's how I learned. But I kind of take some of the best things from the Flutter code labs, the core Flutter code labs, and then I made some of these my own. So I truly recommend you guys go to romanjustcodes.web.app/workshops. Find some of the workshops that I've been putting together for beginners. I will be dropping by the end of this week some intermediate and advanced level workshops where you're going to be learning animations in a very simple way, state management. Those of you who want to, are debating what type of state management you want to use, I'm going to show you how to do that in a very efficient way without going crazy or like getting frustrated. So I am pleased to announce this. Please go ahead and use them. You can use them even if your own events. I welcome everybody to use this. So thank you, Rustam, for
Fantastic.
reminding me
Well,
about
I mean, it's a great answer, and it almost sounds like we've planned this question. But I mean, truth be told, I had
it.
not.
Does. It does sound like it was planned. So very good, but I'm amazed.
That's really great.
Fine saying it like that. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I think this is it from the questions that I could see. If there are questions that I've missed, please, please, please just copy paste them at the bottom and I'll read them. So I'll give you a few more seconds to do that. And while people may be doing that, I will spend a few seconds saying yet again, thank you for doing this. This is really, really great for doing this for the whole community, for everyone to watch. And, it will be there on YouTube uh, for later on. So, one more tiny little thing. So, is that let me see, where is our, uh, so we are on social media. And you're more than welcome to find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Um, Search for GDG Tech Sessions. You will find us there and follow us. And there will be more great content coming your way. Thank you very much and see you soon. Bye bye.